The morning was busy and the streets were alive with the usual rush of people hurrying to get to work, school, and appointments. Among them, a young man moved with purpose, though his steps were heavy from the weight of exhaustion. He had been working since early dawn, juggling 2 part-time jobs just to keep up with his bills and help his family. Despite the fatigue, there was a warmth in his heart, a willingness to notice others even when life seemed harsh. At the bus station, he noticed her. She was standing awkwardly near the ticket counter, glancing down at her purse with a look of mild frustration. Something in her eyes caught his attention. She seemed out of place, yet not in a way that screamed wealth or sophistication. There was a vulnerability, a small moment of struggle that made her human in a way the morning crowd seemed to have forgotten. He watched her hesitate, weighing her options. She didn't have enough change for the bus, and her face betrayed the subtle frustration of someone who wanted to maintain composure, despite a small but irritating obstacle. Without thinking much about it, he stepped closer and offered a few coins, his voice quiet but sincere. "Here, you can use this for the bus," he said. She looked up, surprised by the gesture. There was a pause, a tiny flicker of disbelief that someone would offer help without expecting anything in return. Usually, gestures of this sort came with strings attached, but something in the way he spoke, the softness in his tone, suggested sincerity. She accepted the money with a small nod, a soft smile forming on her lips, though she didn't say much. Words felt unnecessary in that moment. He smiled back, a simple, genuine smile that didn't carry pretense or expectation. Then he turned and walked away, heading toward his first job of the day. She watched him go, feeling an unexpected warmth linger where his presence had been. She felt a strange mix of gratitude and curiosity. There was something about him, something that made her heart feel lighter for reasons she couldn't explain. The day continued, but the image of his kind eyes and humble smile stayed with her. She went through her routine, attending meetings, making decisions, and signing documents with the precision of someone who had built an empire from nothing. Yet despite the success and the wealth surrounding her, her mind kept returning to the young man at the bus station. She wondered about him, his life, his struggles, and what made him so different from the people she usually encountered in her daily circle. Meanwhile, the young man went about his day, unaware of the impression he had left. He worked diligently, serving customers, running errands, and doing everything he could to make ends meet. Helping her had been a small act, one of many he performed each day without expectation or reward. Life was not easy, but he carried it with a quiet dignity, a sense that even small acts of kindness mattered. Days passed, and neither forgot the encounter, though their lives continued in their separate paths. For her, the brief interaction became a gentle echo in the background of her busy life. She found herself smiling at memories of his honesty and the way he had treated her, not as someone special, not as a CEO, but simply as a person. For him, life moved on with its usual rhythm of work and responsibility, yet sometimes he thought about the woman who had accepted his help, wondering if she was okay, if her day had been a little better for that small gesture. As the city moved around them, their lives were unknowingly connected by a thread of humanity. It was a simple moment, almost invisible in the vastness of the city, yet it had left an imprint that neither would understand fully until fate brought them together again. The young man continued to navigate his world with humility and strength, unaware that someone powerful and influential had taken notice of him. The woman, despite her position and wealth, began to see that kindness and sincerity were rare treasures, far more valuable than the possessions she had accumulated. And so, their story began with a quiet act of generosity, an unspoken understanding that sometimes the smallest gestures can carry the heaviest weight in the heart. In that fleeting morning moment, the foundation for something extraordinary was laid, though neither realized how much their lives were about to intertwine in ways neither could have imagined. It was a simple start, a human connection forged in the midst of a busy world, waiting patiently for life to reveal the next chapter. The woman could not stop thinking about him. Every time she sat in her office making decisions worth millions, her mind would wander to the young man who had helped her without knowing who she was. It was not just that he had given her money, it was how he had done it. Quietly, without any expectation, without seeking recognition. In her world, where people often approached her for personal gain or flattery, his sincerity felt almost unreal. She tried to continue her normal routine, but she found herself looking for signs of him in the streets, in the small neighborhood she rarely visited. Sometimes she would walk near the bus station where they had met, hoping to catch a glimpse of him again. Her heart would race with anticipation whenever she thought she saw someone who resembled him. But often it turned out to be just someone else. Still, the hope lingered, and she found herself smiling at the thought of seeing him again. For him, life continued as usual. He woke up early, went to his first job, and then to the second, juggling responsibilities with determination. His days were filled with the small challenges of survival, running errands, helping his family, dealing with customers, and saving every penny he could. But he had no idea that his small gesture had sparked a curiosity and admiration in someone he would never have imagined. He remained humble, focused on his daily life, not thinking about wealth or status, only about living honorably. The woman, despite her position, began to change in subtle ways. She found herself enjoying simpler things, a walk in the park, observing people in the market, noticing the small details of life that often went unnoticed in her fast-paced corporate world. She began to realize that her wealth, while comfortable and impressive, had created a barrier between her and ordinary experiences. This young man, in his quiet life, had opened her eyes to the beauty of ordinary humanity. Curiosity turned into a quiet determination. She wanted to know more about him, not because of who she was, but because of who he was. She learned his routines, the neighborhoods he frequented, the small shops where he bought his meals. She discovered that he had a kind heart, helping neighbors when they were in need, always polite, always respectful. He was the type of person who listened, who cared without asking for attention. And with each discovery, her admiration deepened. However, she also knew the world she lived in could not easily mix with his. She was a CEO, a public figure, someone whose life was often scrutinized and dissected. If he ever found out who she was, would he be overwhelmed or intimidated? Would he think she had helped him just because of her wealth and power? These questions lingered in her mind, making her cautious but not stopping her desire to connect. She began to find small, indirect ways to support him without revealing herself. Sometimes she would pay for his groceries at a store he frequented, leaving the payment anonymous. Other times she would arrange for small services he needed to be covered quietly. She wanted to make his life a little easier, not to impress him but because she genuinely admired his strength and character. It was a silent game of observation and kindness, a dance between curiosity and discretion. Despite her efforts to remain unnoticed, she occasionally caught glimpses of him from a distance. She watched how he interacted with people, how he treated children in the neighborhood with warmth, and how he always found time for a word of kindness. Her heart warmed every time she saw him smile genuinely at someone, laugh easily, or offer help without hesitation. She felt a pull she could not explain, a connection forming despite the differences in their worlds. Meanwhile, he remained unaware. He had noticed a few anonymous gestures, but could never quite figure out who was behind them. He thought of the world as a place where kindness was rare. So when small unexpected things happened, he simply accepted them with gratitude and continued with his life. He appreciated help when it came, but he never assumed it was tied to someone powerful or influential. To him, the mystery was part of the beauty, a small reminder that not all people were selfish or calculating. The woman, on the other hand, found herself thinking of him constantly. She started imagining conversations with him, wondering what it would be like to sit across from him and talk freely, to learn about his dreams and fears, to share parts of herself that few people had the privilege of knowing. She felt an unusual vulnerability, an openness she rarely experienced. For someone so used to controlling situations and outcomes, this feeling was both exhilarating and frightening. Over time, she realized that her feelings had grown beyond admiration. She felt a sense of affection, a quiet love rooted not in appearances or status but in the simple truth of who he was. It was a love that demanded patience and subtlety, for she could not yet reveal her identity or intentions. It was a test of her own self-control, her ability to respect the boundaries of the life he led while finding ways to be near him, to support him, to understand him. In the background, life for both of them continued with its usual unpredictability. Challenges arose in his world. Bills to pay, opportunities to chase, responsibilities to bear, but he faced them with courage and resilience. In her world, decisions with high stakes and significant consequences were daily realities. Yet her heart now carried the quiet joy and anticipation of seeing him, even in passing. Every time their paths came close, even briefly, there was a subtle energy, a spark that neither fully understood. She found joy in observing him from afar, feeling a connection that transcended words or gestures. He remained a beacon of authenticity in a life that often demanded compromise, a reminder that goodness could exist without ulterior motives. And so, their worlds began to orbit around each other silently. One with wealth and power, the other with humility and resilience, connected by a small act of kindness. Though neither fully realized it, this connection was slowly laying the foundation for something much deeper. A bond based on respect, admiration, and the unspoken recognition of the humanity in each other. The invisible thread had been woven, waiting patiently for the moment when their lives would intersect more fully, when curiosity and affection would have the chance to blossom into understanding and trust. Weeks passed, and their lives continued on separate paths, yet fate had a way of bringing them closer piece by piece. The woman found herself constantly in the same neighborhoods he frequented, sometimes by chance, sometimes by quiet design. She observed him in his element, noticing the small gestures that defined his character. The way he helped an elderly woman carry groceries, the patient manner with which he spoke to children, the respect he showed every person he interacted with, all of it made her admiration grow even stronger. One afternoon, the city was bustling as usual, but a sudden summer rainstorm forced people to seek shelter under shop awnings and bus stops. The young man was caught off guard, and as he ran for cover, he noticed the woman standing under the same shelter, looking slightly surprised to see him. She smiled at him, a simple, warm smile that instantly made the hectic, wet city feel a little lighter. He nodded politely, unsure of how to react. Their previous encounter had been brief, and although he remembered her, he did not recognize her at first. Something about the familiarity of her eyes and the warmth of her expression, however, stirred a memory deep inside. He greeted her, a cautious but friendly tone in his voice, and they began to talk. The conversation was casual at first, small talk about the rain and the city, but slowly it began to feel natural and comfortable. For her, these moments were precious. She relished the simplicity of their interaction. The fact that he treated her like any other person. She realized that this was the first time in a long time that she felt completely seen, not as a CEO or a wealthy individual, but simply as a human being connecting with another human being. And he, despite the sudden curiosity about her and the subtle hints that there was more to her than met the eye, was drawn to her presence. There was a sincerity in her demeanor, a gentle warmth that made him feel at ease. Over the following days, they began to cross paths more frequently. Sometimes it was at the corner coffee shop he visited in the mornings, other times at the small convenience store where he bought his lunch. She never forced the interaction, always keeping a careful balance between being present and remaining unnoticed. Her life was full of responsibilities and public scrutiny, yet she found herself willing to step out of her comfort zone just to be near him. He began to notice little acts of kindness that seemed to follow him. A meal paid for at a small diner, a package left anonymously at his doorstep, a helpful note slipped into his mailbox. These gestures puzzled him, but rather than overthinking them, he accepted them with gratitude. Life was not easy, and these small surprises brought unexpected comfort and joy. Yet he remained grounded, never assuming that someone of significant means was behind them. The woman, observing his life from a distance, learned more about the challenges he faced. She saw the long hours he worked, the sacrifices he made for his family, and the quiet way he faced difficulties without complaint. Each discovery deepened her admiration and affection. She realized that his strength and humility were not born out of wealth or privilege, but from character and resilience, and she began to feel a desire to help him in ways that did not compromise his dignity or independence. One rainy evening, she found herself sharing a taxi with him by chance. The city was slick with water, and they were both trying to reach their respective destinations. Inside the small cab, the warmth of the heater and the closeness of the space made conversation inevitable. They talked about life, hopes, fears, and the small joys that made the day bearable. She listened with genuine interest, fascinated by his perspective, his optimism despite hardship, and the small ways he found happiness in everyday life. He in turn found her approachable and sincere, someone who did not judge or patronize him but simply listened. As the weeks turned into months, their connection grew stronger. She continued to support him in subtle ways, leaving him small gifts, paying for small necessities, and ensuring that he was comfortable in ways he did not notice were orchestrated. She never revealed her identity, respecting the natural flow of their growing bond. It was a delicate balance, a dance between admiration and discretion, and it brought her joy that was both exhilarating and comforting. He, unaware of her true identity, began to feel a deep respect and fondness for her. There was something about her that made life feel lighter, more hopeful, and more meaningful. He did not fully understand why he looked forward to seeing her, or why her presence lingered in his thoughts, but he welcomed it. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of connection that went beyond casual encounters or fleeting friendships. Their interactions were never forced or orchestrated. They happened naturally, often by chance, yet they seemed guided by an invisible hand. Every smile, every shared word, every small act of kindness became part of the growing tapestry of their relationship. The woman, despite her wealth and influence, felt herself drawn to the simplicity of his world, the authenticity of his character, and the warmth of his heart. And he, without knowing it, was becoming a significant part of her life, leaving an imprint that would only deepen over time. As they continued to navigate their separate lives, a subtle tension and anticipation developed. Both were aware of the growing connection, yet the circumstances kept them in a delicate balance. The woman, cautious and thoughtful, wondered when the right time to reveal herself would be. He, unsuspecting, remained open and sincere, drawn to her without fully realizing why. It was a time of quiet discovery, of mutual admiration and respect, a period where the foundation of trust and affection was being laid. Each moment, each encounter, was a small step toward something larger, a relationship that would eventually bridge the gap between their worlds. And through it all, the simple act that had started it all, the giving of bus money, remained the spark, the catalyst that brought two very different lives into orbit around each other, waiting patiently for the day when fate would allow them to connect fully and openly. The connection between them continued to grow quietly, almost invisibly, as if the city itself had conspired to keep their lives intertwined. Days that might have passed without notice suddenly felt charged with anticipation whenever their paths neared each other. The woman, ever careful and observant, studied him from afar, learning the nuances of his life, appreciating the simplicity that made him remarkable. The way he moved through the world, the ease with which he connected with people without judgment, made her heart swell in ways she could not articulate. He, on the other hand, began to notice the subtle patterns in her appearances. Though he did not know who she truly was, he felt a familiarity, a warmth that drew him to her without conscious thought. The chance encounters became more frequent yet remained natural, as if the universe had aligned to make their worlds overlap without forcing it. He found himself looking forward to these moments, feeling an inexplicable sense of joy at seeing her smile, hearing her voice, or even noticing her from a distance. One afternoon, as the sun dipped lower in the sky and painted the streets with golden light, they found themselves walking along the same street after their separate errands. She casually fell into step beside him, neither acknowledging the coincidence immediately, both content to simply share the space. After a few minutes, a simple conversation began, tentative but filled with genuine interest. They spoke about everyday life, the quirks of the city, and the small victories and struggles that each faced. There was no pretense, no need to impress. The words flowed easily, effortlessly, as if they had known each other far longer than a few brief encounters. The woman, feeling a surge of courage, decided it was time to let him see more of her, though not fully revealing everything yet. She shared small stories about her work and the people she met, careful to avoid details that would give away her identity. She wanted him to appreciate her not for her status but for her thoughts, her humor, and the way she saw the world. His laughter, his thoughtful responses, and his occasional teasing made her feel a lightness she had not experienced in years. There was a natural rhythm to their conversation, a dance of words and gestures that drew them closer. He found himself intrigued by her perspective, the way she looked at the world with curiosity, empathy, and a hint of wonder. She asked questions that showed she was genuinely interested in his life, not in passing but in understanding. He found it easy to open up, to share small stories of his work, the challenges he faced, and the moments that brought him joy. For the first time, he felt someone was listening with care, without judgment or expectation, and it made him feel seen in a way few people had ever managed. Days turned into weeks, and their interactions became a comforting rhythm. The woman continued to support him in subtle ways, sometimes leaving a small gift, paying for something he needed, or arranging for a kind gesture from someone else without revealing her hand. He noticed the kindness but remained unaware of her involvement. Each act made his days lighter. Each interaction deepened his admiration for this kind, attentive stranger. One evening, as they walked through a quiet part of the city park, she decided to reveal a bit more of herself. Still carefully, but with honesty and openness, she shared stories of her childhood, her dreams, and her occasional struggles with loneliness despite her achievements. He listened intently, touched by her sincerity and vulnerability. He began to realize that she was more than just a pleasant presence. She was someone with depth, warmth, and a rare authenticity that he felt drawn to. As the conversation continued, their bond deepened. They laughed at small jokes, shared quiet observations, and began to understand each other in ways that went beyond words. The woman felt a strange sense of relief and excitement, knowing she had found someone whose heart was as genuine as hers. He felt a connection that was new and exhilarating, sensing a mutual understanding that was rare in his experience. The woman knew that revealing her true identity was inevitable. She had come to care deeply for him, not because of who she was, but because of who he was. The thought of keeping her secret for much longer became almost unbearable. She wanted him to know her fully, to see that the admiration, the support, and the quiet gestures were born from genuine affection and respect, not obligation or curiosity. When the moment finally came, it was simple, heartfelt, and unassuming. They sat on a bench in the park, the city lights twinkling around them, and she spoke honestly, revealing her true self. She explained her position, her responsibilities, and the life she had built, but she made it clear that her feelings were genuine, rooted in the person he was, not the status she held. She waited, anxious yet hopeful, for his reaction. He was silent for a moment, processing the revelation. The truth was surprising, even shocking, but it did not change the way he felt about her. The connection, the laughter, the shared moments, all of it had been real, and he recognized that the person he admired and felt drawn to was the same person sitting before him. He felt a mix of astonishment and relief, understanding that love and respect had the power to cross boundaries, to connect people from different worlds in meaningful ways. With time, the initial shock faded, replaced by a sense of wonder and joy. He saw her not as a wealthy CEO, but as someone who had cared for him genuinely, who had admired his character, and who had chosen to reveal herself with honesty and trust. His heart opened, and he realized that he had come to care for her deeply, appreciating not just her presence but the courage and sincerity she had shown. From that day forward, their relationship entered a new chapter. There was a sense of equality, mutual respect, and deep affection. They navigated the differences in their worlds together, learning from each other, supporting each other, and finding joy in shared experiences. The foundation of trust, admiration, and authentic connection that had been laid over months of quiet observation and subtle gestures now blossomed into a love that was patient, genuine, and resilient. The story of how they met, the simple act of giving bus money, remained a cherished memory, a symbol of how small acts of kindness could change lives. It reminded them both that love often begins in the simplest ways, with sincerity, empathy, and an open heart. And in that understanding, they found not just affection but a profound companionship that promised to grow and endure, bridging the gap between their worlds with warmth, respect, and unshakable trust. From the moment the truth was revealed, their relationship took on a new depth and clarity. The young man had learned that the woman he admired was not just a stranger, not just someone he had a fleeting connection with, but a powerful and successful individual who had chosen to see him for who he truly was. The realization was startling at first, but it quickly became a source of joy and fascination. He admired her courage, her authenticity, and the deliberate ways she had quietly supported him over the months. They spent the following weeks getting to know each other in ways that were honest and open. She invited him into her world gently, showing him parts of her life without overwhelming him. He, in turn, shared his world, the hard work, the sacrifices, the small joys, and the moments that gave him hope. They discovered that despite the difference in their social and financial circumstances, they shared common values, kindness, honesty, empathy, and a desire to make life meaningful both for themselves and those around them. The woman, who had lived a life filled with decisions and responsibilities, found herself learning from him. She learned to appreciate the beauty and simplicity, the small acts of daily life that she had previously overlooked in her fast-paced, high-pressure environment. Walking through the market, observing people interact, enjoying simple meals, these were experiences that reminded her of the importance of being present and cherishing each moment. He, in turn, learned from her strength, determination, and ability to navigate the complexities of life with grace and intelligence. He admired her compassion, not just for him but for the world she had the power to influence. He saw that her wealth and position were tools she used thoughtfully, and it inspired him to dream bigger, to imagine possibilities beyond what he had previously thought possible. As their relationship grew, so did the challenges. There were societal expectations, questions from friends and family, and the subtle pressures of public perception. People often struggled to understand how two individuals from such different worlds could connect so deeply. Yet these obstacles only strengthened their bond. They learned to communicate openly, to support one another, and to build trust that was unshakable. Their love was no longer about fascination or curiosity. It had become a partnership rooted in understanding, respect, and shared values. One evening, they took a long walk through the city streets, discussing their dreams and fears. The city was alive with lights and movement, but for them it felt intimate and private. They talked about the future, about the ways they could support each other, about how to balance their worlds while maintaining their individuality. The conversation was deep and honest, filled with moments of laughter, reflection, and quiet wonder. In each other's company, they felt safe, understood, and inspired. The woman continued to support him, but now it was done openly, with his knowledge and appreciation. Together, they explored opportunities to improve his life without taking away his independence. She introduced him to experiences and resources he had never imagined, but always with sensitivity and respect. He began to embrace possibilities that were once out of reach, encouraged by someone who believed in him and saw the potential in his character. Their love became a source of joy not only for themselves, but for those around them. Friends and family who witnessed the bond could see the authenticity, the mutual respect, and the depth of care that defined their connection. It was a love that transcended appearances and status, grounded in genuine understanding and the recognition of each other's humanity. They found that they could face challenges together, celebrate successes together, and find comfort in each other's presence even in moments of uncertainty. The young man, once struggling with the burdens of everyday life, now carried a quiet confidence and hope. He knew that the woman's love was rooted in admiration for who he was, not for what he could provide or achieve. This gave him a sense of freedom and empowerment, allowing him to embrace his dreams and ambitions with renewed vigor. He also learned the importance of patience, empathy, and gratitude, understanding that true love is built on support and respect rather than material wealth. The woman, in turn, experienced a profound sense of fulfillment. She realized that love was not about grandeur or public recognition, but about genuine connection, trust, and the ability to appreciate life through the eyes of someone who valued what truly mattered. His humility, resilience, and kindness reminded her of the simple joys she had often overlooked, and she found herself inspired to live more fully, to embrace both her responsibilities and the small moments that brought happiness. Together, they created a life that balanced their differences while celebrating their shared values. They spent time in both worlds, walking through neighborhoods he knew, attending events and meetings she was part of, and finding joy in the ordinary and extraordinary alike. Their love was a living testament to the power of sincerity, humility, and empathy. It was proof that connection could transcend social boundaries, that hearts could meet in the middle, and that love could grow from a single, unexpected act of kindness. The memory of that first morning, when he had given her money for the bus without hesitation, remained a cherished story for both of them. It symbolized the beginning of their journey, a reminder that even the smallest gestures can change lives in unimaginable ways. From that simple moment grew a profound connection, a love built on trust, understanding, and the willingness to see and cherish the true essence of another person. Over time, their relationship deepened, evolving into a partnership that combined love, respect, and shared dreams. They faced life's challenges together, celebrated victories, and found comfort in the knowledge that they had found someone who truly understood and valued them. The journey from a brief encounter at a bus station to a lifelong bond was extraordinary, yet it felt natural and inevitable, a testament to the power of human kindness and the unexpected ways love can enter a life. In the end, they found a life filled with joy, growth, and deep connection. The young man learned to embrace the possibilities that came with love, support, and encouragement, while the woman discovered the beauty of humility, authenticity, and the profound impact of genuine human connection. Their story was not just one of romance but of mutual transformation, showing that love can inspire, uplift, and create a future richer than either could have imagined alone. And so their journey continued, anchored by the memory of that small, selfless act, growing stronger with each passing day. It was a love story born of kindness, nurtured by understanding and solidified by the realization that the heart sees beyond wealth, status, and circumstance, recognizing instead the true worth of another soul. Together they embraced a life that celebrated both their differences and their shared humanity, proving that love at its core is about seeing, valuing, and cherishing the essence of the person beside you. Years passed, and their love continued to grow deeper, stronger, and more meaningful. What started as a simple act of kindness had turned into a life built on understanding, trust, and companionship. They had been through ups and downs, moments of doubt and triumph, and had come to realize that true love was not about grand gestures but about being there for each other, through every small moment that made up a lifetime. The young man had changed so much since that day at the bus stop. He had gone from worrying about daily expenses to running his own small business, one that had grown slowly but steadily with her encouragement and guidance. He often looked back at how far he had come, remembering how she had seen potential in him when no one else did. She had believed in him when he didn't even fully believe in himself. That faith had been the foundation on which he built his new life. For her, the years had been equally transformative. Though she had always been strong, capable, and confident in her role as a CEO, she had never felt as fulfilled as she did now. Her success used to be measured in profits and achievements, but now it was measured in love, peace, and shared happiness. The life they had created together gave her something she had never found in boardrooms or business meetings: emotional balance and genuine connection. They had built a quiet life away from the public eye. Despite her fame and success, she preferred simplicity. They lived in a beautiful home surrounded by nature, with open windows that let in sunlight and laughter. Their mornings often began with long walks, holding hands and talking about everything from their dreams to the things that made them laugh. Sometimes they would sit by the lake near their home, watching the water ripple gently, finding peace in the silence between them. But even in their happiness, life continued to bring challenges. Her company faced difficult decisions as the market changed, and she had to navigate through moments of uncertainty. During those times, he stood by her side, offering comfort, patience, and perspective. He reminded her that success didn't define her worth, and that her kindness and integrity mattered far more than any profit or recognition. His words often brought her calm, helping her make decisions with clarity. Likewise, there were times when he struggled with his growing responsibilities. Running a business came with stress, and he sometimes felt the pressure of expectations. She, in turn, became his pillar, guiding him when he doubted himself, reminding him of how capable and strong he was. Their relationship was a true partnership, each one uplifting the other when life tested them. As time went on, their love became a story of growth and maturity. They celebrated small milestones like anniversaries spent quietly at home, or simple dinners cooked together after long days. They laughed often, sometimes about the simplest things, and even in silence they found comfort. Their bond was built on years of shared experiences, on the knowledge that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. One rainy afternoon, they sat on the porch, watching the raindrops fall softly against the wooden deck. The smell of wet earth filled the air, and the sound of rain brought a peaceful rhythm. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat there without needing to speak. In that quiet moment, They both reflected on how life had brought them together in the most unexpected way. He remembered that day when she had asked for bus money, never imagining that the woman standing in front of him was someone whose life would become intertwined with his forever. She thought about that moment too, how his simple act of kindness had changed everything. She had seen many people in her life, people who wanted to impress her or gain something from her position, but that day he had treated her like an ordinary person. He didn't ask for anything in return. That sincerity had touched her deeply, and even now, after all the years, it was what she loved most about him. They talked about the past sometimes, not with nostalgia, but with gratitude. Every struggle, every misunderstanding, every happy and sad moment had shaped their love into something unbreakable. They had learned that love was not about perfection, but about choosing each other again and again no matter how hard things got. It was about forgiveness, patience, and the willingness to grow together. Their friends often admired their relationship, saying it seemed effortless. But they both knew it wasn't effortless at all. It took work, communication, and compromise. They had learned to listen, to understand, and to accept that they were two different people with different ways of thinking, but that their love was strong enough to bridge any gap. They had built something rare, something pure and lasting. Years later, as they grew older, they decided to slow down even more. She gradually stepped back from her company, handing over leadership to trusted hands while he continued to grow his own business with a small team that admired his honesty and dedication. They both wanted to spend more time together, traveling, exploring, and giving back to the community that had shaped them. They started a small foundation together, one that helped young people from humble backgrounds access education and job opportunities. It was his idea, inspired by his own struggles years ago. She fully supported it, using her connections and resources to bring it to life. The foundation became one of their proudest achievements, not because of recognition, but because of the lives it touched. They often visited the students they supported, listening to their stories and offering encouragement. It reminded them both of how powerful one small act of kindness could be. Their story became an inspiration to many, though they never sought attention. People who knew them admired their humility and the way they carried their success. They were a reminder that love could exist without pride, that giving could bring more joy than receiving, and that happiness often came from the simplest acts of care. As the years went on, their bond only grew stronger. Even when gray hairs started to appear and time left its marks, their affection never faded. They still laughed together, teased each other, and found beauty in ordinary days. They had seen the world change, watched people come and go, but through it all, they had remained each other's constant. One evening, they sat together on the same porch where they had watched countless sunsets before. The air was cool, and the sky was painted in shades of orange and gold. He looked at her and smiled, thinking about how lucky he was. She turned to him, her eyes soft and filled with love. Neither needed to say much. Everything was understood. He reached for her hand the same way he had done so many times before. The years might have changed many things around them, but that feeling, the warmth of her hand, the peace of her presence remained exactly the same. They knew that life was unpredictable, that nothing lasted forever, but they also knew that what they had built together would live on in the hearts of those they had touched. In that quiet moment, the past and present seemed to blend together. The memory of that bus stop felt as vivid as ever. The gay sound of the city, the rush of people, her voice asking for help, and his decision to give without expecting anything in return. That moment had set everything in motion, leading them to this beautiful life they shared now. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he whispered softly, thanking her for walking into his life that day. She smiled and told him that it was he who had given her something far more valuable than money: faith in the goodness of people, faith in love. They both laughed gently, knowing how true that was. The years continued, filled with moments big and small. They saw the world, made new memories, and continued their quiet life of giving and loving. Their love became the kind that doesn't need to be spoken to be felt, the kind that exists in gestures, glances, and shared silences. It was a love that had started by chance but endured by choice. When people asked them the secret to their lasting happiness, they would both smile and say it was simple: kindness. That one word held the essence of their story. From the bus stop to their home by the lake, from uncertainty to a life filled with meaning, kindness had brought them together, and it had kept them together through everything. Their story wasn't about luck or fate alone. It was about two hearts choosing to see the best in each other and never letting go of that belief. It showed that love can grow from the simplest beginnings and that sometimes the smallest gestures can lead to the greatest journeys. And so, even as time moved on and seasons changed, their love remained steady, a quiet, unwavering light that continued to shine, reminding everyone who knew them that real love doesn't demand perfection. It simply asks for sincerity, patience, and the courage to care. Their journey, which began with a few coins at a bus stop, had become a beautiful example of what happens when compassion meets destiny. Even after decades together, their connection continued to deepen, and each day brought new ways to discover each other. Life had become a rhythm, a steady flow of shared experiences, small joys, and unwavering support. The young man had grown into a figure of quiet strength and wisdom, shaped by his own journey and by the love and belief she had given him from the very beginning. She, in turn, had become even more grounded, finding purpose not only in her achievements, but in the life they had built together, in the kindness and joy they shared daily. They had seen countless changes in the world around them, cities growing taller, technology reshaping lives, and new generations taking on challenges they could only imagine. Yet despite the speed of change, their relationship remained constant, rooted in trust, empathy, and an appreciation for life's simplest pleasures. They still began their mornings with long walks, savoring the fresh air, observing the world around them, and exchanging thoughts that ranged from trivial observations to deep reflections about life. Their home had become a sanctuary, a place where laughter, conversation, and quiet companionship intertwined. The man had developed a habit of brewing fresh coffee each morning, the aroma filling the kitchen and signaling the start of a new day. She would join him, leaning against the counter, sipping her cup slowly while they discussed plans, dreams, or memories of the past. These ordinary moments, seemingly small, were the threads that wove their life together into a rich tapestry of shared experience and intimacy. Over the years, they had cultivated a community of friends and neighbors who admired their partnership, not for its status or wealth, but for its authenticity and warmth. They hosted gatherings filled with simple meals, laughter, and conversation, where people felt welcomed and valued. The couple's philosophy had always been that the value of a relationship was not measured by grandeur, but by the depth of care, trust, and attention given to one another. They also dedicated themselves to mentoring and guiding young people in their city, helping those from humble beginnings to see the possibilities in their own lives. The young man often shared his story, speaking honestly about the challenges he had faced and the way kindness and belief in him had changed everything. She offered guidance and resources, always emphasizing the importance of integrity, empathy, and perseverance. Together they became a source of inspiration, demonstrating that love and support could have a ripple effect far beyond their own lives. Travel remained an important part of their life together. They explored countryside towns, coastal villages, and quiet forests, often choosing places far from the crowds, where they could appreciate nature and each other's company. Each trip was an adventure, not just in discovering new locations, but in deepening their understanding of one another. They learned each other's likes, dislikes, and quirks more fully, finding comfort in familiar routines and excitement in new experiences. Challenges, of course, persisted. Health concerns, financial decisions, and family matters occasionally tested their patience and resilience. Yet they faced every situation together. When he experienced moments of self-doubt, she reminded him of the man he had become, the wisdom and strength he had earned. When she faced uncertainty or stress, he offered calm perspective and unwavering encouragement. Their love was not blind to reality. It was a partnership grounded in awareness, respect, and mutual support. One summer evening, as the sun dipped low, they sat together on their porch, listening to the distant sounds of the city mingling with the chirping of evening birds. He reached for her hand, and they sat in silence for a long time. In that quiet, he reflected on their journey, thinking back to the moment when he had given her a few coins for the bus. Who could have imagined that such a simple act would lead to decades of shared life, love, and growth? She squeezed his hand gently, sensing his thoughts, and smiled. They both knew that everything that had come after that moment was built on sincerity, courage, and a willingness to see the best in each other. They also celebrated the small victories in life, A successful day at the business, a breakthrough in one of the mentoring programs, or simply a meal cooked perfectly, became reasons for gratitude and shared joy. Each moment reinforced the connection they had nurtured over the years, showing that fulfillment often came in the accumulation of small, thoughtful acts rather than grand gestures. Over time, they noticed the ways in which they had influenced each other's growth. He had learned patience, emotional insight, and a broader perspective on life's challenges. She had learned humility, the beauty of simple living, and the power of consistent kindness. They often discussed these lessons, marveling at how much they had grown together, how their love had served as a mirror, reflecting strengths and weaknesses, and inspiring improvement on both sides. Their extended family became an important part of their lives. They celebrated milestones, birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, with warmth, laughter, and an emphasis on togetherness rather than extravagance. They shared stories with younger generations, teaching the value of honesty, empathy, and thoughtfulness. They never pushed their wealth or influence, instead showing through example that true success was measured by integrity, connection, and compassion. As they aged, the couple found new ways to cherish their bond. Morning walks became slower, filled with pauses to observe nature and savor each other's presence. Evening talks stretched longer into the night, sharing reflections, hopes, and dreams that remained alive even after decades of partnership. They recognized the importance of presence, of appreciating each other's company without distraction or expectation. They also took pleasure in quiet hobbies. Gardening became a shared activity, where they tended to flowers and vegetables, nurturing life together just as they had nurtured their relationship. Cooking simple meals became a creative expression of love, each dish seasoned with laughter and conversation. Music and books provided evenings of relaxation and shared enjoyment, as they explored stories, melodies, and ideas together. Through it all, their love never depended on material possessions or external validation. It was rooted in the understanding that each person's true worth lay in character, empathy, and the ability to care genuinely. They remembered how it all started, the bus fare, the simple act of help that could have been unnoticed. Yet it had sparked a connection that would change both of their lives forever. They often reflected on the importance of that moment, understanding that life's smallest choices could create ripples with unimaginable consequences. In their later years, they continued to give back to the community, focusing on initiatives that empowered youth, provided education, and promoted kindness. They often spoke with the young people directly, sharing insights from their life journey, emphasizing the importance of sincerity, hard work, and compassion. Their story became a quiet inspiration, demonstrating that love, generosity, and empathy could have long-lasting, far-reaching effects. The couple also made it a point to cherish private, everyday moments. Breakfast together on the porch, quiet afternoons reading side by side, evenings watching sunsets, or simply holding hands while walking. They understood that the true essence of life was in these moments, not in grand gestures or public accolades. They celebrated the ordinary as extraordinary, finding richness in simplicity.